They say age makes you invisible, but growing old only sharpened my eyes. I'm Eleanor Whitmore, born in 1951 in Perth, Australia. Back in 2023, at 72, my 8-year-old granddaughter Isla whispered to me, "Grandma, Mummy says you're going to a nursing home today." I felt gutted, like my heart slid straight through the floor, but then something happened that changed everything. Today, at 74, sitting by my window with a quiet smile and a legal trust worth more than they ever imagined, I'm finally sharing this because I want every grandmother out there to know you are not powerless. If you're listening, drop your city in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. That morning, the light was soft, pouring through the curtains like warm milk. I had just finished making breakfast for Isla, her usual toast soldiers and hot chocolate, when she looked up from her plate and leaned in. "Mummy and Daddy are sending you away today," she said softly, her little hand clutching her teddy. "Mummy said you were becoming too much, and Daddy said today's the day." I sat there stunned. My fingers froze around the mug of tea. I had known Avalon wasn't fond of me, but I never imagined they'd actually go through with it. My son, Callum, was always a quiet boy, easily led, never confrontational. His wife, though? She had a smile like honey and a soul sharp enough to cut stone. I had lived with them ever since my hip replacement. It was meant to be temporary. A few months turned into nearly a year. I cooked, cleaned, and stayed out of their way. But Avalon's sighs got longer, her eyes colder, her words sharper. I overheard them at night, sometimes whispering behind closed doors about her house, her pension, her being in the way. My husband, Harvey, God rest his soul, had been a mechanical genius. He left behind a legacy of patents, silent inventions that had quietly accumulated wealth over the years. I never flaunted it. Harvey always said, "The best treasure is the one nobody knows you're holding." And now, it seemed, my own son and his wife were about to test that belief. After Isla went to school, I packed a small bag. I took only what mattered: my ID, my old wedding ring, and the little red binder Harvey had put together before he passed. It contained everything: trust documents, patent ownerships, bank statements, and one curious instruction: if ever betrayed, call Margot Pierce. Margot was a private investigator based in Sydney. Harvey had met her years ago when someone tried to steal one of his designs. I never thought I'd need her. But betrayal has a funny way of making old numbers useful again. I left a note on my bed and slipped out the back door like a ghost. By evening, I was checked into a quiet in 2 suburbs away. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. "You're not done," I whispered. "Not yet." Margot was everything Harvey described: sharp, quiet, and extremely efficient. Within 3 days, she had compiled a full report. It was worse than I thought. Avalon had recently racked up over $200,000 in credit card debt, most of it hidden from Callum. They were behind on mortgage payments. And worse, Avalon had been researching the cheapest aged care homes in rural Victoria. Some of them were absolutely inhumane. She had even gone as far as contacting a family lawyer to ask about having me declared legally incompetent so she could act as my guardian. I couldn't breathe when I read that part. They were going to steal my life. Not just my home, but my dignity. My freedom. I sat with that pain for a full day before I called Richard Geller, the family lawyer Harvey trusted. I told him everything. And then I showed him the binder. His eyes widened when he saw the hidden assets, the trusts, the property deeds. "Mrs. Whitmore, with this, you could buy the entire street they live on." And that's when the idea hit me. I bought the house next door to Callum and Avalon. They didn't even notice. It had been up for sale for 6 months. The old owners were tired, ready to move, and the offer I made, cash and over asking, had them signing within days. While the sale was finalized, I had the place gutted and renovated. Nothing flashy. Just a cozy, modern sanctuary. A home for me. And maybe, a safe haven for Isla, too. Richard helped me redraw my will. I left Callum out temporarily. The clause was simple: he could only inherit once he demonstrated consistent moral responsibility and family loyalty over 5 years. Avalon was left out entirely. And Isla? I set up a $5 million education and living trust in her name, locked until she turned 21, with monthly letters from me pre-written to guide her through life. I waited 2 weeks. And then I made the call. "Callum," I said, my voice cool but steady. "I know what you were planning. I'm not coming back. But I will see you very soon." He stammered, "Mum, it's not what you think." "No," I cut in. "It's exactly what I think. And I have proof." Avalon called me within the hour, pretending to be sweet. "We were just worried, Eleanor. You've been forgetting things lately. We didn't want you to be alone." "You mean forgetting like the time I remembered to have Margot trace your calls and track your nursing home inquiries? That kind of forgetting?" The silence on the other end felt delicious. Then I said, "Look out your window tomorrow morning. I'm moving in next door." And I did. Oh, it was a sight. A black car pulled up, and there I was stepping out with my cane and my dignity, waving at Isla as she peered out their upstairs window. The curtains fluttered like they were gasping. I smiled. Because revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it just has to be seen. Isla came knocking the next afternoon. "Grandma," she said, "can I have toast soldiers with you again?" I opened the door wide and held her close. Every afternoon after school, she came over. We did puzzles, painted, watched old films. I taught her how to sew a button and bake banana bread. She smiled more, laughed more. And Callum noticed. One Saturday morning, he showed up. "Can I come in?" he asked. I studied him. His eyes were tired, guilt heavy on his face. "Sit," I said, offering him tea. He told me everything. How the debts had mounted. How Avalon pushed and pushed. How he felt cornered. Weak. Ashamed. "I never meant to hurt you," he said quietly. "I just didn't know what else to do." "You could have asked me for help," I said. He hung his head. "You always wanted me to stand on my own. I didn't want to disappoint you." I nodded. "And yet, here we are." But I saw in his eyes that flicker of the boy I once rocked to sleep. The one who loved model trains and snuck cookies before dinner. "Start fixing it," I told him. "And maybe, just maybe, we can fix this too." As for Avalon, she didn't come near me for weeks. But when she finally did, it wasn't with arrogance. It was with red-rimmed eyes and shaking hands. "I'm sorry," she said. "I lost myself chasing what didn't matter." I said nothing, just looked at her. Then I walked back inside. Because forgiveness isn't a gift you give on demand. It's a door you choose to unlock when you're ready. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. Moving into that house felt like reclaiming my breath after years underwater. Everything inside was chosen by me, for me a gentle defiance against the life they tried to trap me in. I kept the curtains open, the porch light on, and the kettle warm. I wasn't hiding anymore. Isla slipped into my routine like sunlight through lace. Every afternoon, her knock at the door was my favorite sound. "Hi, Grandma," she'd say, kicking off her little sneakers. "What are we making today?" We baked scones, made paper flowers, and read books with voices. She smiled with her whole face. I made sure to tell her every single day how special she was. Because love, when it's real, doesn't cost anything but it changes everything. Callum kept his distance for a while. I saw him sometimes, standing at the fence, watching. There was regret in his eyes, regret that clung to him like a shadow. I never pushed. When he finally came back, it wasn't with words. It was with action. One evening, I noticed him mowing my front lawn without asking. Just quietly doing it. Another day, a package arrived from my favorite tea shop, the very one Harvey and I used to frequently order under his name. Little things, humble things. I recognized the language of apology. It wasn't loud. It was steady. A month after I moved in, Avalon came to the door with a plate of quiche. "Homemade," she said, a little too quickly. Her hands trembled. I invited her in. She stood awkwardly near the kitchen island, avoiding my eyes. "I wanted to talk," she began. "Not about the past. About now. I've made a lot of mistakes. And I know sorry doesn't undo them. But I need to say it anyway." I let her speak. She told me how ashamed she was, how money had consumed her. How she was raised by parents who believed wealth equaled worth. I thought if we could just have more, things would feel stable. But I see now. I made everything unstable. When she finished, I looked at her for a long moment. Avalon, I said slowly, what you did hurt me more than you can imagine. But I believe people can change. Not because they say they will, but because they show it. She nodded, eyes glassy. I'd like to try. I didn't hug her. I didn't forgive her right there. But I accepted the quiche. And that was the beginning. As the weeks passed, something shifted. Callum started coming over too, sometimes with Isla, sometimes just to help with errands. We planted herbs in my garden, basil, thyme, and rosemary. Like Dad used to do, he murmured, pressing the soil down. One afternoon, Isla brought home a drawing. It was a house split in two. On one side was her family. On the other hand, me. And in the middle, she'd drawn a little bridge connecting both. She wrote, in her careful, misspelled handwriting, I love both my homes. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow. Because in the end, it wasn't my wealth or my anger that mended the cracks, it was that little girl's heart. I hadn't forgotten the legal steps I'd taken. The will remained unchanged. The trust for Isla sealed. But I started writing new letters for her, ones about forgiveness, grace, resilience. Lessons I hadn't known I'd needed to learn again, even at my age. One Sunday, Callum joined me on the porch. Mum, he said, you were right about Harvey's decision. About not telling me about the money. I raised an eyebrow. I would have relied on it. I wouldn't have learned how to fight for anything. I let Avalon's panic become mine. I became someone I never meant to. I sipped my tea, nodding. And now? He exhaled. Now, I want to become someone I'd be proud for Isla to know. I reached for his hand and held it. Then start today. He did. He found a second job, started managing their debts properly. Avalon began volunteering at a women's shelter. They started therapy. It wasn't perfect. There were still tense days. But the weight between us began to lift, piece by piece. I watched my family learn how to be a family again, not because I forced them to, but because I gave them space to choose better. Isla started spending weekends with me. We painted the guest room a sunny yellow, added fairy lights to the windows. This is my room, right, Grandma? She asked. I smiled. It always was. One morning, I woke to find a note on my doorstep, scribbled in crayon. Dear Grandma, thank you for not leaving. I love you more than toast soldiers. Love, Isla. And I knew at that moment I had already won. Revenge didn't look like slamming doors or public confrontations. It looked like peace. It looked like knowing they had underestimated me, and I came out not just stronger, but softer. Eventually, I changed the will again. I didn't tell them right away. But this time, Callum was included again with conditions. A small clause that ensured Isla would always be the priority. That our family's future wouldn't be built on deception. The house next door stopped being a symbol of war. It became a bridge, just like Isla's drawing. And sometimes, I sit out front and wave to Avalon when she pulls into the driveway. She waves back. Sometimes she even smiles. I still make toast soldiers every morning, just in case Isla knocks. And every night, before bed, I whisper a prayer not just for protection, but for peace. For families like mine. For grandmothers who feel forgotten. For those waiting for justice that doesn't come with anger, but with wisdom. Because even now, at 74, I'm learning that the quietest moves can change the loudest storms. So to every grandmother out there who's been hurt, pushed aside, or underestimated, stand tall. You're stronger than they remember, wiser than they expect, and far more powerful than they believe. Don't let them write your ending. Pick up the pen. If this touched your heart, like the video, subscribe to this channel, and share this story with someone who needs a gentle reminder of their worth. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear where you're watching from. Moral lesson. Never let betrayal define you. Your quiet wisdom, deep love, and graceful strength can rewrite any ending and heal the cracks they thought were permanent.